Ever wondered what happens when a $60,000 SUV keeps picking a fight with a $20 trash can? In my case, it turned into a neighborhood showdown that no one saw coming. This HOA Karen destroyed my trash can 57 times with her Escalade, so I replaced it with a concrete one and watched her destroy her own SUV instead. What started as morning property demolition ended with criminal charges, a $12,000 settlement, and one very expensive life lesson about picking the wrong neighbor to bully. Picture this: the sharp crack of plastic shattering echoes through dawn silence, followed by the metallic scrape of bumper meeting asphalt as a pearl-white Escalade speeds away, leaving my garbage scattered like confetti across the driveway again. But here's the thing about bullies: they never expect their victims to fight back with actual concrete evidence. By the time I was done, this self-appointed compliance officer had demolished her own vehicle, exposed a $47,000 embezzlement scheme, and learned the hard way that some neighbors refuse to be intimidated by clipboards and fake authority. Seriously, what would you do if your neighbor was basically playing demolition derby with your property every single morning? Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. I want to see if this kind of HOA madness is happening in your town too. Let me back up and tell you how this whole mess started. My name is Marcus Holloway. I'm 45 and I've been an electrician for 22 years. Recently divorced, fighting for joint custody of my two teenagers, Emma, 16, and Tyler, 14. We live in Pinewood Gardens, one of those cookie-cutter HOA neighborhoods in suburban Ohio, where lawns must measure exactly 2.5 inches tall and mailboxes come in 3 approved shades. That's where I live. I bought the corner lot house 3 years ago, right after finalizing my divorce. I thought it would be a fresh start, a place where the kids could have their own rooms, good schools nearby, and a safe neighborhood. What I didn't count on was dealing with Brenda Whitmore, a 52-year-old widow who decided she was the neighborhood's compliance officer, a title that doesn't even exist in the HOA bylaws. Brenda drives a pearl-white Escalade that's larger than some studio apartments. She moved in around the same time I did, after her husband passed away. No kids, retired from managing a downtown bank, and armed with a photographic memory of every HOA rule. She treats our monthly dues like her own private wallet, and since she's close friends with the HOA president, Gerald Thornfield, she's basically untouchable. Now here's where location comes into play. My corner lot means trash pickup requires me to place my bin near the street every Tuesday morning. City ordinance says within 3 feet of the curb, which happens to be exactly where Brenda takes her daily power walk at 6:15 a.m. The first incident went down on a Tuesday in September, second week of school. I was getting the kids ready, coffee brewing, and the garbage truck still 20 minutes out, when crack, plastic exploded like a gunshot. I rushed outside to see my trash can obliterated, garbage scattered across the driveway like someone detonated a confetti bomb filled with banana peels and coffee grounds. And there was Brenda, backing up her Escalade, rolling down her window with that fake look of concern. "Oh my," she said, without a trace of sincerity in her voice. "These streets are just so narrow. I hope you weren't too attached to that old thing." Old thing? I just bought it the week before for $23 at Home Depot. Still, I kept my cool, assuming it was an accident. I spent 20 minutes picking up soggy cereal boxes and coffee filters while diesel exhaust lingered in the morning air. Emma and Tyler stood at the front window, mortified to see their dad crawling around the driveway in pajamas. That first week it happened 3 more times. Same routine, 6:15 sharp, the rumble of her oversized engine, the crunch of plastic meeting steel, then silence as she sped away. By Friday, my suspicion was growing. By the following Tuesday, I knew it was deliberate. Mrs. Olivia, my elderly neighbor across the street, confirmed it. "She takes the long way around on purpose," she said in careful English. "Plenty of room on the other side, but she drives close to your can every time." I tried reasoning with Brenda first, catching her on the sidewalk during one of her afternoon patrols. "Hey, about the trash can situation." But she cut me off with a syrupy smile. "Marcus, I understand you're new to community living. These streets were designed for normal-sized vehicles, not oversized containers blocking traffic flow. Perhaps you should consider placement timing adjustments." Placement timing adjustments? As if there were some magical hour when the garbage truck didn't require cans at the curb. That night, I began digging into property rights, HOA bylaws, and municipal ordinances. Turned out trash cans placed on public right-of-way still counts as personal property. More importantly, our HOA had no specific rules about timing or materials, only that bins couldn't be visible from the street except on collection day. By the end of the month, I'd replaced 4 trash cans, spending $92 total. The kids were stressed by the constant drama, and my custody evaluator was now noting neighborhood stability issues. Something had to give. That's when the smirk appeared. Brenda began making direct eye contact during her morning demolition runs, flashing that smug little smile that proved she knew exactly what she was doing. Game on. By mid-October, she escalated from property damage to psychological warfare. One afternoon, I came home from a job site to find a certified letter waiting, the kind that makes your stomach sink before you even open it. The thick paper felt expensive, the fresh ink sharp in my nose. This wasn't some recycled form letter. "Improper trash receptacle placement creating traffic hazard," it read, written in legal jargon slick enough to impress a paralegal. Section 4.7.3, no obstruction of vehicular traffic patterns. Deadline, 72 hours to remedy or face $50 in daily fines. She had clearly fast-tracked it while the board was still rattled from the evidence I'd presented at the last meeting. Here's where my years troubleshooting electrical codes paid off. When things don't add up, you dig deeper. That night, I tore through municipal law like I was tracking a faulty circuit. After 3 hours of cross-referencing city ordinances with county regulations, I hit gold. The city code explicitly required trash cans within 3 feet of the curb on collection day. Even better, HOA authority ended at the property line. They literally couldn't regulate public right-of-way. I remembered reading about a similar case online where a California homeowner beat their HOA using the exact same argument. So I spent the weekend building my defense like I was prepping for the electrical contractor's exam all over again. Ring doorbell camera set up perfectly to capture the morning routine. $47 for peace of mind. A professional survey confirming my bin placement complied with city code. Even got Mrs. Olivia to provide a written statement, though her hands trembled as she signed. "I don't want trouble," she whispered, "but this isn't right." Meanwhile, Brenda was busy moonlighting as a social media prosecutor. She flooded the Nextdoor app with dramatic posts about reckless homeowners endangering children, dangerous corner obstacles, and how responsible drivers were being forced into oncoming traffic. The comments turned into a battlefield between her 3 loyal supporters and everyone else convinced she'd lost her grip on reality. Then came the twist that showed how desperate she was getting. A buddy at City Hall, Dave, who works in the permit office and sometimes hires me for electrical jobs, called with news. The city had received 4 separate complaints about my dangerous corner. Each claimed to be from a different witness, but they were clearly written by the same hand. All time-stamped within 15 minutes, 2:47 a.m. "This wasn't you, Marcus," Dave chuckled. "Either your neighborhood's got an outbreak of insomniacs with identical writing styles, or someone's working overtime to build a case against you." By Thursday's board meeting, I'd compiled a folder thick enough to choke a horse. The community center reeked of industrial carpet cleaner and decades of stale municipal meetings. 12 homeowners showed up, a record turnout that had President Thornfield fiddling with his tie every 30 seconds. Brenda sat at the board table in a navy blazer that screamed, "I mean business." But her hand trembled when she reached for her water glass. She knew what was coming. When they called for old business, I rose with my documentation. I'd like to address the violation notice regarding trash can placement. The fluorescent lights hummed as the room fell silent. I read the city ordinance aloud, word for word, then displayed my survey results proving perfect compliance. The coup de grace was casually mentioning my consultation with Amanda Sterling, a property rights attorney who'd handled dozens of HOA disputes. She found the selective enforcement patterns particularly interesting, I added, watching Brenda's face drain of color. President Thornfield cleared his throat 3 times before mumbling, "Well, this requires further review. We'll table this matter pending additional consideration." Translation: they had nothing, and everyone knew it. But Brenda wasn't finished. As we filed out, she cornered me under the buzzing security lights in the parking lot. That's when she showed her true colors. "You think you're so smart," she hissed, loud enough for a dozen homeowners still milling around to hear. "People like you come into decent neighborhoods and think the rules don't apply." Well, I've got news for you. This is just the beginning. Mrs. Rodriguez from Maple Street actually gasped. Jim Torres, our maintenance guy, suddenly found his keys fascinating. The racial undertones hung in the humid October air like smoke from a house fire, unmistakable to everyone present. My phone, sitting casually in my shirt pocket, caught every venomous word. That night, Emma asked why the mean lady hated us. Tyler wanted to know if we'd have to move again. I tucked him into bed with promises that everything would be fine, but privately, I was crunching the numbers of this war. 3 replacement trash cans, 14 hours of documentation, attorney fees piling up. Yet something had shifted. Other homeowners were whispering about board overreach, asking uncomfortable questions about selective enforcement. Brenda's parking lot meltdown had exposed what many already suspected. This wasn't about traffic safety or community standards. It was about power, control, and putting people she didn't like in their place. The next morning brought a telling shift. Instead of her usual ramming routine, Brenda slowed to a crawl, eyeing my trash can like a general studying the battlefield. The pattern was evolving, which meant bigger trouble was brewing. November hit Pinewood Gardens like an icy slap, and Brenda hit back even harder. While I was congratulating myself on winning round 1, she was busy weaponizing every obscure HOA bylaw she could dig up. She must have spent weeks combing through the community guidelines like a prosecutor prepping a RICO case. The attacks came in waves. First, a violation notice claiming my grass measured 2.75 inches, apparently exceeding the 2.5-inch maximum by a criminal quarter-inch. Next, my mailbox, which had faded from heritage blue to what she declared an unauthorized weathered navy. Finally, 3 minuscule tears in my window screens, so tiny you'd need a magnifying glass to see them. Each violation carried a $50 fine with a 10-day payment deadline. The kicker? I spent an entire Saturday with a tape measure and camera documenting identical violations on 14 other homes. Gerald Thornfield's grass was pushing 3 inches. Mrs. Patterson's mailbox was nearly the same shade as mine. Half the houses on Maple Street had screen damage from the summer hailstorm. Yet somehow, only my property drew official attention. While Brenda played bylaw prosecutor, I was sipping coffee with Dale Kowalski at the Home Depot contractor desk. Dale's been pouring concrete for 23 years. When I mentioned my trash can troubles, his weathered face split into a grin. "You know," he said, stirring sugar with a paint stick, "there's nothing in city code about materials. Plastic, metal, concrete, as long as it holds trash and meets the size specs, you're golden. That conversation planted the seed of Brenda's worst nightmare: 60 pounds of concrete mix, steel rebar for reinforcement, and a clever tweak to a standard plastic shell. Total cost, $47, far cheaper than the $350 I was staring down in fines and replacement bins. But before I could set my plan in motion, I had to confront her harassment campaign. Tuesday night, I compiled a full set of photos documenting every comparable violation around the neighborhood. By Wednesday morning, I filed a formal complaint with the HOA board for selective and discriminatory enforcement. Here's something I've learned after 2 decades of electrical permits: bureaucrats hate when you turn their own system against them. My complaint forced the board into a corner: either enforce the rules across all properties or admit I was being singled out. Neither option worked in Brenda's favor. The real bombshell came when I crunched the demographics of her violation targets. In the past year, she'd issued 67 notices. 49 went to single parents, elderly residents, or minorities. Only 18 were directed at married couples or long-term owners. The bias was so blatant it practically begged for a lawsuit. I remembered reading about Fair Housing Act violations. Discriminatory HOA enforcement can spark federal investigations. The thought of Brenda explaining her citation patterns to a civil rights attorney made me smile for the first time in weeks. That Friday, I kicked off my weekend project. Emma and Tyler thought it was hilarious, helping me mix cement in the garage while classic rock blared from my paint-splattered radio. The smell of setting concrete took me back 30 years when I helped my dad pour our basement floor. That sharp, alkaline scent of something permanent being built. The design was simple but effective: hollow bottom for weight distribution, drainage holes for functionality, and an exterior identical to every other bin on the block. From the outside, it looked completely ordinary. Inside, 60 pounds of steel-reinforced concrete waited to teach Brenda a physics lesson.
About immovable objects. Monday morning, I set my newly fortified trash can in its usual spot, nothing out of the ordinary. Right on schedule, 6:15, the rumble of Brenda's oversized engine filled the street. But this time her approach was slower, more cautious. She must have noticed the can looked identical, yet something about it made her suspicious. The first hit came at about 15 miles an hour, her typical ramming speed. The sound was completely different. No sickening crunch of plastic. Instead, a deep thunk, followed by the screech of metal grinding concrete. Her Escalade's running board crumpled like foil, while my trash can sat there looking mildly unimpressed. From my kitchen window, coffee mug warming my hands, I watched Brenda sit frozen in her SUV for a good 30 seconds. Clearly confused, she revved the engine and tried again from another angle. Same result: more damage to her vehicle, 0 to my concrete fortress. The beauty of it all was its legality. No city ordinance broken, no HOA rule violated. Just a homeowner who upgraded his receptacle with sturdier materials. If she wanted to keep ramming it, that was her choice, and her insurance nightmare. Over the next week, Brenda staged increasingly desperate attacks on my concrete creation. Each collision left fresh scratches and dents on her pearl-white Escalade, while my bin remained smugly intact. The irony was delicious. The very weapon she used against me was destroying itself. By Friday, her SUV was carrying nearly $800 worth of accumulated. Damage on her end kept piling up, while mine showed nothing but a few scuff marks that made the can look even more authentic. The neighborhood was buzzing, and for once, Brenda wasn't the one controlling the story. By mid-November, she'd evolved from nosy busybody into full-blown private investigator. Her obsession with my trash can was so intense, I half expected she was diagramming it in flowcharts and conspiracy corkboards. I'd spot her pearl-white Escalade, now decorated with dents and scratches, creeping past my house at odd hours, like a suburban stalker on surveillance duty. The first real sign came Tuesday morning when Mrs. Olivia called, whispering like she was leaking classified intel. "Marcus, that woman was in your driveway last night with a flashlight and some kind of scale. I swear she was trying to weigh your trash can." The mental image floored me. Brenda, probably in her navy blazer and sensible shoes, crouched in my driveway at midnight, balancing a reinforced bin on a bathroom scale like she was cracking a Cold War code. She needed a hobby that didn't involve trespassing. But instead, her investigation only escalated. By Wednesday, Jim Torres, the maintenance guy, mentioned she'd cornered him at the hardware store, grilling him about who'd been buying concrete lately. Then she started sniffing through my social media, combing my weekend project posts like some Facebook detective. The desperation hit peak absurdity Thursday afternoon when a city building inspector showed up at my door. Guy's name was Pete, mid-40s, tired eyes, the kind of man who looked allergic to paperwork. "Got a complaint about unauthorized concrete structures on residential property," he sighed, checking boxes on his clipboard like he was filing taxes. I walked him around to the bin. He gave it a 30-second glance, shrugged, and said, "It's a trash can, not a foundation, no permit needed, no violation." His tone had that quiet edge of a man who'd seen way worse and couldn't believe he'd been called out for this nonsense. "Or start charging admission," I told her, which got a reluctant laugh. The truth was, Brenda's war had crossed from petty nuisance into neighborhood folklore. Her Escalade was now less luxury SUV and more rolling monument to poor decision-making. The running board dragged like a busted wing, the bumper was cracked into a spider web, and every time she drove past, the headlight rattled like it was about to fall out. Neighbors stopped pretending not to notice. At the cafe, I overheard two retirees betting on which part of her car would go next. Mrs. Rodriguez admitted she'd begun timing Brenda's morning trash runs like they were commuter trains. And on Elm Street, the teens had organized an actual betting pool, complete with a spreadsheet tracking damage odds. My trash can had gone from neighborhood nuisance to local legend. What Brenda thought was a campaign of intimidation had somehow turned into the suburban equivalent of primetime entertainment. But I knew one thing. People like her didn't take humiliation well. If she couldn't win by force or bureaucracy, she'd find another angle. And the thought of her scheming in silence was somehow more unsettling than watching her ram my trash can every morning. Take credit for having the coolest revenge story in the district. Tyler, always the pragmatist, wanted to know if we could monetize the spectacle. $5 a seat, Dad.
We'd pay for college just by letting the neighbors watch Brenda wreck her SUV every morning. It was a joke, but he wasn't wrong. The drama had turned into community theater. The real shift came when Patricia Lopez, the only level-headed board member, pulled me aside after a gathering. In a low voice by the coffee station, she delivered intel that stopped me cold. "Marcus, Brenda's been meeting privately with Gerald. She's pushing for enhanced enforcement authority, property inspections, material restrictions, even contractor background checks. But her bigger revelation was financial. She's also lobbying hard for maintenance contracts with some company I've never heard of. Always comes prepared, like she's rehearsed it for weeks." That night, I switched from defending myself to investigating her. If Brenda was this obsessed with projects and specific vendors, maybe it wasn't just about control. Maybe it was about money. Public records don't lie, not if you know where to dig. By Sunday night, I found something that made her trash can crusade look like a sideshow. Brenda Whitmore wasn't just a bored micromanager, she was running a racket. My concrete can hadn't just resisted her SUV, it had disrupted her entire scheme. I'd started with a simple search, new business registrations under the name Whitmore. One hit made me sit up straighter. Whitmore Construction, LLC, formed 6 months ago. Brenda listed as 40% owner, her husband Richard as president. The timeline was damning. Company created in May, first HOA contract bid in July, her harassment campaign against me beginning in September. The pattern practically screamed motive. Digging deeper, the picture sharpened. In just 4 months, Whitmore Construction had landed 7 HOA contracts: landscaping, sidewalks, playground repairs, community center touch-ups, totaling $23,400. But it was the bidding trail that sealed it. Every single contract was won by Whitmore, underbidding competitors by exactly $50 to $100. Legal on paper, but the precision made it obvious. Brenda wasn't enforcing rules to protect the community. She was building a personal empire. That discovery sent my electrician's brain into high gear. Brenda had signed off on every single one of those contracts. 7 votes, 7 approvals, 7 payouts that funneled into her family's business. The conflict of interest was so obvious it might as well have been outlined in flashing lights. I recalled my earlier legal research about fiduciary duty breaches. Board members must disclose any personal financial stake in vendor agreements. Failing to do that isn't just unethical, it breaks state nonprofit laws and can trigger lawsuits or even criminal fraud charges. The proof was all there in digital form: business filings, HOA minutes, awarded contracts, and bank deposit slips from the association's monthly records. Brenda had turned her board seat into a pipeline that sent community dues straight into her household's bank account. And the timeline made her actions look even worse. My first friendly chat with Brenda about the trash can issue? September 15th. My first question about the inflated maintenance budget? September 3rd. That meant she began her harassment campaign only 12 days after I casually asked about repair costs. My trash can hadn't just been in her way. It had been shielding evidence of a theft scheme impacting 127 homeowners. The possible violations were staggering: civil liability for mismanagement, criminal charges for fraud, and immediate removal from the board once the conflict of interest was confirmed. This was no longer about property disputes. It was about corruption, embezzlement, and someone ruthless enough to bully and harass just to hide her crimes. I printed everything, saved digital copies to 3 cloud accounts, and forwarded the complete file to attorney Amanda Sterling with the subject line, "Urgent Review, Potential Criminal Implications." The balance of power had shifted. Brenda assumed she was clashing with some divorced electrician over where a trash can sat. In reality, she was facing the unraveling of a fraud that could cost her freedom and bankrupt her family. Tuesday morning, I stood at my kitchen window and watched her stage her usual crash attempt against my concrete barricade. Her Escalade now bore more than $1,200 in damage, while my trash can remained a stubborn monument to her foolishness. But for the first time since this conflict began, I wasn't dwelling on cans, bylaws, or driveway collisions. I was focused on justice, safeguarding the neighborhood, and savoring the moment when a bully realizes that sometimes the people they try to intimidate fight back harder than expected. The real battle was only just beginning. On Tuesday evening, my garage shifted from a weekend workshop into a planning room that could have rivaled a military setup. I cleared the benches, set up folding tables, and placed 5 different chairs in a circle around an evidence board.
I had built with paper and red string, much like a crime show display. By 7 p.m., the main group had arrived. Mrs. Olivia came first with a thermos of jasmine tea, looking both nervous and determined. Jim Torres showed up in his work uniform, tool belt clinking as he walked. Patricia Lopez carried a pile of HOA financial records she had taken from the board files. Finally, Dale Kowalski arrived last with a box of donuts, smiling as if we were preparing for a party rather than exposing corruption. "All right," I said, attaching the final timeline chart to the wall. "Here's what we're dealing with." The evidence board looked like an official investigation. There were $23,000 in questionable contracts, 7 clear conflict of interest violations, 47 documented harassment cases, and 1 SUV showing repeated damage as proof of Brenda's declining behavior. Patricia gave a low whistle after reviewing the financial analysis. I had suspected something was wrong with the contracts, but I hadn't realized the pattern was this large.
Each time I raised a question about the expenses, Brenda had detailed answers ready, almost as if they were practiced. Dale studied the photos of her vehicle damage closely. He noted the bumper alone would cost around $2,000 to repair, and alignment problems would quickly wear down her tires. My concrete trash cans had become a very expensive lesson for her. We spent an hour setting up our multi-step approach. Jim would watch Brenda's actions and record any retaliation. Mrs. Olivia would lead a door-to-door effort to gain support from neighbors. Patricia would focus on convincing other board members to approve a financial audit. Dale would provide technical insight for any construction-related evidence. The legal approach needed careful timing. Amanda Sterling confirmed we had solid grounds for harassment, fraud, and misconduct claims, but we had to be strategic. If we filed too soon, Brenda could destroy evidence. If we waited too long, she might cover her tracks. My 22 years as an electrician had taught me one key lesson. Complicated problems need layered solutions. Fighting HOA abuse only with property rights arguments would be like fixing a short circuit by swapping out a single wire. You have to look at the entire system, not just one piece. Our plan would attack from 4 angles at once. Legal pressure through complaints and lawsuits. Social pressure through organizing and petitions. Political pressure through media and city oversight. And financial pressure through audits and contract cancellations. The community outreach began Wednesday morning. With professional materials and undeniable evidence, I started knocking on doors throughout Pinewood Gardens. The reaction was strong. 89 signatures for property rights, 34 demanding immediate audits, and 12 people willing to testify at the board meeting. At first, Mrs. Rodriguez on Maple Street nearly shut the door in my face. But within 5 minutes, she was angrily signing the petition and muttering in Spanish about Brenda. "That woman fined me for putting my trash can out 15 minutes early," she complained. 15 minutes? Like she had a stopwatch? The opposition map showed a clear divide. Brenda's strongest backers were older homeowners who had benefited from her selective rule enforcement. The undecided group was mostly newer residents worried about property values or possible retaliation. Everyone else wanted accountability. Preparing for the media took 3 careful days. Channel 7's investigative team, led by reporter Sarah Kim, had a history of covering HOA corruption cases. Our press package included professional graphics, legal expert statements, and a 12-minute video of Brenda's repeated car collisions. The social media push grew faster than I expected. The Pinewood Gardens Transparency Group on Facebook gained 67 members in 4 days, with neighbors sharing stories of unfair treatment and questionable finances. One person even posted a time-lapse video of Brenda's daily routine set to circus music, which spread quickly through local community networks. Meanwhile, my concrete trash can continued doubling as both evidence and amusement. On Thursday morning, Brenda made her 53rd crash attempt, leaving a headlight hanging like a broken tooth. Local kids started showing up early at bus stops just to watch the spectacle. Emma said her classmates were calling our home the house with the unbreakable trash can. Tyler even began charging friends 50 cents. Each kid wanted to show the video compilation on his phone. The story spread beyond our neighborhood faster than gossip at a church potluck. By Sunday evening, everything was organized. The board meeting set for Tuesday night, media interviews for Wednesday morning, and criminal complaints ready to file on Thursday. 118 residents said they would attend, and 17 planned to speak during public comment. The coalition was in place, the evidence solid, and Brenda had no idea what was coming. Time to act. The weekend before the planned board ambush, Brenda went off the rails. Desperation was obvious in her behavior. Her harassment escalated from annoying to potentially criminal faster than her Escalade could hit my concrete barrier. On Saturday night, spray paint woke me up. From my bedroom window, I saw a dark figure crouched by my trash can under the motion lights. By the time I grabbed my phone and ran outside, the person had left, leaving amateur graffiti spelling "move" in bright orange across the concrete.
Spray paint on concrete washes off in about 30 seconds. Security cameras, however, record in high definition, including the license plate of a pearl white Escalade parked 3 houses down during the incident. Monday brought another harassment escalation, an anonymous complaint to the gas company alleging suspicious excavation that might hit underground lines. The utility inspector who came was thorough, spending 2 hours with detection gear. He found nothing, no digging, no violations, no danger. "There's no excavation on your property," he told me as he loaded his equipment. "Whoever called this either has very poor vision or serious problems." The twist that showed Brenda's desperation came Tuesday morning at the hardware store when Jim Torres found me. He looked worried. "Marcus," he said, "she hired a private security company to watch your house, Riverside Security. I know the owner's cousin. $200 a day to surveil a trash can dispute. She's lost it." Brenda's surveillance also backfired. My upgraded security recorded her drive-by inspections, midnight photography sessions, and more erratic behavior. She was unraveling quickly, and I had it all on camera. Wednesday produced something that made me truly angry. Emma came home from school upset after overhearing Brenda telling another parent about dangerous influences and inappropriate role models for neighborhood kids. The conversation had clear racial undertones and obvious implications from my custody situation. That evening, I hired Beth Morrison, a retired police detective experienced in harassment investigations. For $200 a day, I now had professional documentation of Brenda's stalking, along with an expert witness who could explain escalation patterns and threat levels. The sabotage attempts escalated through the week. Someone poured what looked like battery acid on my concrete trash can. It left a stain but didn't cause damage. Anonymous complaints hit the city about my lawn, permits, and supposed violations. Fake negative reviews appeared on my business page faster than I could take them down. The most alarming discovery came Friday evening. Tyler was fixing his bike in the driveway when he spotted something under my work truck. A small black device with blinking lights and a magnetic mount. "Dad," he called nervously, "what's this thing stuck under your truck?" It was a GPS tracker, professional grade, worth about $300 and completely illegal without consent. I photographed it thoroughly before removing it and going straight to the police. Officer Derek Martinez filed the report with the tired look of someone familiar with this type of escalation. "Mr. Holloway, this is no longer a neighborhood issue. We're looking at criminal charges for unauthorized surveillance, stalking, and harassment." Meanwhile, the insurance fraud angle surfaced. Brenda had submitted a $3,200 claim for road hazard damage, insisting the collisions happened on city streets. But my Ring camera footage told a different story. Clear video evidence of deliberate impacts with my trash can over weeks. When State Farm's investigator called, I had a full file ready, 53 documented collisions, witness statements, video clips, and a professional damage assessment. The investigator's conclusion was immediate. "Ma'am, this isn't road hazard damage. This is intentional destruction using a vehicle." They denied her claim and sent the file to their fraud unit. Community pressure was also mounting. Our Facebook group grew to 94 members, each sharing new accounts of Brenda's behavior. Mrs. Patterson reported harassment over rose bushes. The Johnsons on Oak Street got violation notices for children's chalk drawings. Even Gerald Thornfield was quietly distancing himself from her. On Saturday morning, Brenda made her 57th collision attempt. This time, the bumper detached completely, forcing her to crawl around my driveway in business clothes, collecting plastic pieces while neighbors watched. It was pathetic more than funny. By Sunday evening, our evidence package was finished. We had documented criminal behavior, notarized witness statements, financial fraud, and an organized community coalition. Tuesday's board meeting would be less a debate and more a public dismantling of Brenda's position. She just didn't realize it yet. Monday morning, only
12 hours before the meeting, Brenda made her most desperate move yet. Gerald Thornfield called an emergency closed-door meeting to address what he called escalating liability and safety concerns. His voicemail sounded like he'd swallowed gravel and nerves. The meeting was classic damage control. 3 board members huddled in the community center office while Prescott and Associates attorney Harold Masterson, $400 an hour, tried to figure out how far into legal quicksand they'd sunk. Through the blinds, I watched animated gestures and Brenda waving papers like white flags. Patricia Lopez texted updates from inside. Brenda's accusing you of making terrorist threats, wants emergency powers to seize dangerous modifications. Harold looks like he'd rather be defending serial killers. Their cover-up was as clumsy as Brenda's morning crash attempts. Someone had backdated conflict of interest disclosure forms for Whitmore Construction, but the email server's digital timestamps told the real story. You can't retroactively invent ethics compliance, especially when the original contract votes are recorded in public minutes. At the same time, the insurance probe was gaining momentum. State investigator Maria Santos had subpoenaed HOA financials, meeting minutes, and all communications between Brenda and the association's insurer. The paper trail was as obvious as a slow-motion train wreck. Tuesday afternoon brought a more surprising turn. Richard Whitmore, Brenda's husband, called me in a near whisper. "Marcus," he said, "this has to stop. She spent $8,000 on lawyers, surveillance, and repairs. Our insurance was canceled. The business is losing contracts. What would it take to make this go away?" I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I told him plainly that Brenda had stalked my family, vandalized my property, committed insurance fraud, and embezzled from 127 homeowners. This wouldn't be fixed with an apology and a check. Then, 2 hours before the board meeting, Brenda filed an emergency restraining order using fabricated evidence, fake threatening voicemails, doctored photos, and witness statements from people who didn't exist. The petition was so poorly put together that Judge Patricia Williams dismissed it without a hearing. "Ms. Whitmore," the judge wrote, "these recordings are clearly edited, these photos staged, and these witnesses appear fictional. Submitting false evidence is contempt of court. Consider this your only warning." But Brenda's legal troubles were piling up faster than her car crashes. The state insurance commissioner had assigned Maria Santos to build a fraud case. The district attorney's office was reviewing stalking and harassment charges. The IRS now had copies of financial records showing unreported income from the construction contracts. By 6 p.m., the community center parking lot looked like a Black Friday sale. Cars lined both sides of Maple Street, with neighbors walking from 3 blocks away carrying folding chairs and homemade signs. Channel 7's news van arrived at 5:30 sharp, followed by Channel 12 and a Metro Weekly reporter. Inside, the room was designed for 40, but now packed with 118 residents, with overflow standing against walls and spilling into the hallway. The mix of sweat and burnt coffee made the air heavy. Brenda walked in late, flanked by attorney Harold Masterson, looking like she wanted to be anywhere else. She had traded her usual navy blazer for black, and her hands shook noticeably. Gerald Thornfield kept tugging at his tie as if it were choking him. Their attempt at intimidation collapsed immediately. Masterson opened with a statement about frivolous complaints and disruptive residents, but Mrs. Olivia rose from her seat, holding her stack of statements. "Excuse me," she said in careful English, "but which one of us has been committing insurance fraud and stealing money?" The room erupted in applause and nervous laughter. 17 neighbors came prepared to speak during public comment, each armed with evidence of Brenda's harassment, shady finances, or selective rule enforcement. The evidence filled 3 banker boxes, video recordings of collisions, contract analyses, notarized statements, and official complaint receipts. But the biggest surprise was still to come. At 6:45, just as Brenda tried to dodge questions about Whitmore Construction, Officer Derek Martinez entered carrying an official folder. "Sorry to interrupt," he said into the silent room, "but I have a warrant to serve regarding insurance fraud and stalking charges." The blood drained from Brenda's face faster than coolant from her damaged Escalade. Masterson leaned in with urgent whispers, while Gerald looked like he was about to have chest pains. Game over. Checkmate. The public reckoning was about to begin. The community center had never seen anything like it. All 127 homeowners of Pinewood Gardens filled a room meanwhile. AT for 40, with another 15 reporters and camera crews setting up like it was a national debate.
The air conditioning couldn't keep up with the heat, and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like insects drawn to the tension. I sat in the third row between Mrs. Olivia and Jim Torres, with my concrete trash can rolled in as Exhibit A beside the podium. The symbolism was obvious. That 60-pound block had become the main witness in what was about to unfold. Brenda sat at the board table, looking like she would have preferred a root canal without anesthesia. Dressed in black instead of her usual navy, she kept glancing at the exit like an animal looking for a way out. Harold Masterson leaned in to whisper frantic advice, while Gerald Thornfield sweated through his shirt like a man awaiting his own sentence. Officer Martinez's warrant folder had shifted the balance completely. The only sounds were the whir of cameras and the nervous tap of Brenda's pen, rapid clicks that felt like Morse code for "help me." Gerald's shaky voice called for order. "We'll now hear public comments regarding recent community concerns." I stood first, carrying my display boards like a prosecutor approaching a jury. The room went silent except for the faint hum of the exit sign. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice carrying through the crowd, "this isn't about trash cans. It isn't about bylaws or property rights or community standards. This is about accountability, transparency, and stopping corruption before it damages our neighborhood." I laid out the timeline piece by piece. 57 recorded collision attempts, the illegal GPS tracker found on my truck, the spray paint vandalism caught on camera, and the false insurance claims that qualified as felony fraud. Then came the key evidence, the financial records. Using a borrowed projector, I showed how $23,400 of community dues had been funneled directly. I revealed that the money had been funneled into Brenda's family construction business account. Each month, everyone had been unknowingly paying inflated fees to cover Mrs. Whitmore's private company expenses. Faces froze in disbelief as I detailed 7 contracts, 7 hidden conflicts, and 7 direct violations of state nonprofit laws. A video reel followed, 12 minutes of Brenda's most infamous blunders, paired with a soundtrack of crunching and screeching metal. Gasps and uneasy chuckles filled the room as the audience watched her increasingly reckless collisions. Then came the moment I had practiced for weeks. "Mrs. Whitmore," I said firmly, turning toward her as the cameras focused, "you've spent $3,400 on lawyers, wrecked your $60,000 car, committed insurance fraud, and harassed my family over a 23 trash can. But the real crime is the $47,000 you diverted from this community into your family's company." The reaction was explosive. Neighbors who had complained for months about soaring HOA dues finally realized where their money had gone. Mrs. Rodriguez jumped up, shouting furiously in rapid Spanish that clearly wasn't flattering. Teenagers from Elm Street broke into applause like they were at a concert. Brenda's reaction was everything I had predicted, and more. She sprang from her seat like a coiled spring, her polished demeanor unraveling in seconds. "This is harassment," she shrieked, her pitch climbing high enough to unsettle dogs down the block. "These people don't understand property values or community standards. They come into respectable neighborhoods thinking rules don't apply to them." The racial undertones in her words hung heavy in the air like lingering smoke. Channel 7's cameras captured every sound, every flailing gesture, every crack in her composure. Mrs. Olivia audibly gasped when Brenda pointed at her and ranted about certain people destroying the neighborhood. Her attorney, Harold Masterson, tried frantically to rein her in, but she was beyond reason. She lunged at my evidence boards, trying to rip them apart, until Jim Torres and 2 neighbors gently pulled her back. On live TV, Brenda was unraveling completely, while Officer Martinez calmly scribbled notes for his report. "I built this neighborhood," she wailed, mascara streaming down her face like black tears. "I upheld property values. I kept standards high. And this is how I'm treated after everything I gave for this community's integrity?" Gerald Thornfield called for a recess, but no one budged. The drama unfolding was too captivating to walk away from. It was better than reality television, more over the top than a soap opera, and more gratifying than watching your greatest rival trip over a rake. In the middle of the uproar, Patricia Lopez rose and voiced the motion everyone had been waiting for. I propose the immediate suspension of Brenda Whitmore from the board, pending criminal investigation and financial audit. The decision was unanimous, 4 votes to none, while Brenda sat restrained in a chair beside Officer Martinez. Justice delivered.
Stone cold, served with an extra helping of public disgrace. What followed unfolded with flawless precision, like dominoes toppling in perfect rhythm. Within 2 days of her televised breakdown, Brenda's life unraveled faster than her SUV suspension after hitting too many curbs. By Tuesday, her curt resignation arrived in 2 bitter lines of text, blaming a hostile environment and unfair attacks. By Thursday, the district attorney charged her with insurance fraud, 6 months of possible jail time, and $5,000 in penalties. On Friday, her insurance license was revoked, and Whitmore Construction's contractor credentials were suspended. The financial reckoning was both swift and merciless. Our emergency HOA audit, conducted by Patterson and Associates CPAs, uncovered $47,000 in padded costs and shady deals. By Christmas, each homeowner had received a $170 refund check, arguably the best holiday surprise Pinewood Gardens had ever known. Richard Whitmore called me once more, his tone weary and defeated. "The civil settlement check is in the mail," he admitted quietly. $12,500, as agreed. Brenda asked me to tell you she's moving to Florida to live with her sister. For a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. Then I remembered the GPS tracker, the fabricated insurance claims, and the endless harassment inflicted on my family. Some lessons come at a high price, and for the Whitmores, the cost was everything. The change in governance was dramatic. Patricia Lopez won the special election for board president in a unanimous vote, campaigning on openness and community trust. The new board enacted strict conflict of interest disclosures, monthly financial reporting, and transparent bidding requirements impressive enough to rival city governments. The first initiative under this reformed leadership was a brand new playground. The renovation was financed entirely with the recovery of embezzled funds. Watching Emma and Tyler help sketch ideas for the new playground equipment alongside neighbors who once whispered about our troublesome family felt like emotional redemption disguised as practical progress. The legal impact reached far beyond Pinewood Gardens. Holloway v. Pinewood Gardens HOA was cited in a dozen property rights disputes across Ohio. Soon after, the state legislature enacted the HOA Accountability Act, mandating financial disclosures and audits that industry experts hailed as the gold standard for local oversight. Channel 7's investigative series earned a regional Emmy for uncovering suburban corruption, and reporter Sarah Kim still calls now and then for my insights on HOA reform bills. Meanwhile, the original collision footage has racked up over 200,000 views on YouTube, sparking copycat resistance movements from Toledo to Cincinnati. My concrete trash can became a neighborhood icon. We relocated it to the community center lobby as a permanent exhibit, complete with a bronze plaque that reads, "Property Rights Protected, 2023. New homeowners hear the entire story at orientation, and visiting contractors often request to see the legendary indestructible can that toppled a corrupt board. Yet the greater triumph was the community's recovery. The Concrete Can Days festival we launched each September now attracts families from 3 nearby developments, featuring bounce houses, barbecue contests, and homeowner rights workshops. Last year's turnout exceeded 800, transforming our past conflict into a celebration of resilience.
The scholarship fund I created from the settlement has already sent 4 students to college. The Marcus Holloway Property Rights Scholarship favors applicants who demonstrate inventive problem-solving against institutional resistance, rewarding the next generation of troublemakers unwilling to accept injustice quietly. Emma and Tyler absorbed lessons in principled defiance no classroom could provide. Emma's college essay about fighting corruption with concrete evidence secured her admission to 3 journalism programs. Tyler launched a YouTube channel, Suburban Justice, where he reports on HOA disputes across the Midwest with the energy of a teenage watchdog journalist. But what surprised me most was the personal healing. My custody evaluation improved significantly once the community began rallying around our family. The judge observed that children thrive when they see parents defending principles and safeguarding family interests through legal action rather than aggression or surrender. My electrical contracting business also grew, fueled by referrals from neighbors who had witnessed my ability to document thoroughly and plan strategically. Evidently, careful problem-solving applies just as effectively to wiring systems as it does to HOA showdowns. And my reputation for achieving results the right way opened professional doors across the county. Sometimes David really does tackle Goliath, but only when David shows up armed with facts, supporters, and 60 pounds of
steel-reinforced concrete. Share your own HOA nightmare in the comments below. Together, we can build a database of corruption and support one another in fighting back. And don't forget to subscribe if you want more stories where the underdog triumphs through preparation, persistence, and perfect timing. Justice is at its sweetest when it's served with community solidarity and creative solutions. Thanks for joining us here on HOA Stories, where the Karens of suburbia finally meet their match. If this tale made you cheer or cringe, be sure to hit like, share your reaction in the comments, and subscribe so you're ready for the next outrageous HOA saga.